Harris was a prosecutor. She went out of her way to keep innocent people in prison. She broke the state record for incarcerating African-American males.
There's a meme that says Kamala Harris broke the state record for incarcerating black males.
Well, that's just not true.
You know what a meme is, correct, right?
Yes, I do.
Come on now.
She purposely put as many people as she could in prison for the purposes of slave labor. I actually lost a friend, somebody who was looking up to Kamala Harris and like, oh, what a role model. Somebody to look up to. Isn't it inspiring? Little girls looking up to her. And I'm like, no, that's horrifying. It's literally the exact opposite of everything Martin Luther King Jr. ever said he believed in and stood for. You know, judge somebody by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. And the content of Kamala Harris's character is just awful. She actively hurts the communities of which she claims to associate with or identifies with. And this is why I hate identity politics. Basically, it's like, well, you can't criticize Hillary Clinton for her corruption or else you're a sexist. You can't criticize Pete Buttigieg for his corruption or his policies because then you're a bigot. You can't criticize Barack Obama or Kamala Harris for their corruption, then you're a racist. And it's like, I criticize Joe Biden just as much. He's an older, wealthy white guy. Like that's
ageist.
Yeah. No, exactly. I supported Bernie Sanders, but I'm ageist. Yeah, because they don't have any. They can't actually refute the substance of your arguments of calling them corrupt and pointing out their corruption. So they revert back to this like, well, I'm progressive because I'm insert identity here. They basically use that as a deflection against any real criticism.
Absolutely.
I think the best person qualified to do a specific job should get that job. If they happen to be a part of a minority community, I think that's or a marginalized community, I think that's fantastic. But then the only thing I worry about sometimes with like identity politics is when you get somebody in the job, all of a sudden it becomes you're unable to criticize that person specifically because they'll use their representation against. So like, for example, if you criticize Pete Buttigieg and his policies as mayor and his wine cave corruption and even now as transportation secretary, or then you get called like, you get criticized as homophobic, you criticize Hillary Clinton and her corruption and all of a sudden you're sexist, you criticize Barack Obama and his mass corruption and his war crimes and all of their terrible neoliberal policies, and you get criticized as racist. And even Joe Biden, who's a rich white male, if you criticize him, then all of a sudden you're ageist. And so they just use the they weaponize identity politics to deflect from populist left economic policies. And when you criticize them for that corruption, then they say that. And a good example of this is just because you have representation doesn't always mean it's a good thing. I mean, Kamala Harris is a person of color, but she has absolutely crushed communities of color. She literally, as prosecutor, helped to stop the release of innocent people of color who, as all evidence shows, did not commit a crime, but she went out of her way to keep them in prison, broke the record for incarcerating African-American males.
There's a meme that says Kamala Harris broke the state record for incarcerating black males.
Well, that's just not true.
You know what a meme is, correct, right?
Yes, I do.
Come on now.
Basically created a slave labor market using the private prison industrial complex. And so she's essentially, and even now the war on drugs, because of how it disproportionately incarcerates African Americans and people of color, has become known as the second set of Jim Crow laws, which somebody like Kamala Harris has supported. Even when somebody says like, hey, could you legalize marijuana or something along the lines of that, she like laughed at them.
My position is it needs to be legalized.
Ron Gold, the Republican candidate for Attorney General, wants to tax and regulate the use of marijuana for recreational purposes.
Colorado is already beginning to prove to everybody that there is sufficient taxable base.
Gold wants to use the millions of dollars projected from marijuana sales for drug and alcohol counseling and for education.
In the face of grave danger.
We asked California's current top cop, Kamala Harris, for her position on this controversial issue.
Your opponent, Ron Gold, has said that he is for the legalization of marijuana recreationally. Your thoughts on that?
That he is entitled to his opinion.
And then she pretended for like 4.5 seconds that she wasn't against the war on drugs when she ran for president. But as soon as she became Joe Biden's vice president and Joe Biden was in favor of the war on drugs, all of a sudden she was again. So I think representation is a good thing. But do you think it's more important that qualified individuals who would be better on policy for those communities would have those positions of power?
I do think that the most qualified candidate is the one that should get in the office.